Birds of unfortunate prey. Why are we doing this again? Smolder asked as she ripped up some weeds from the school grounds. To welcome back Silverstream when she gets back from visiting her home. And those are weeds, not flowers. Ocellus pushed aside some bushes, pulling up a few more flowers that were hidden behind. But she's seen flowers before, they're not that interesting. Yes, but she's easily excited by things on the surface. Easily excited? You could give her sand as long as it was dry and she'd be excited. Ocellus sighed, trying to push the flowers back into the earth. Then what would you do? I've been waiting for you to ask. Smolder grabbed Ocellus by the hoof and took to the air, flying her back to their dorm rooms. As Smolder walked down past the doors, Ocellus followed, a little curious until Smolder stopped in front of Silverstream's door and began to pick the lock with her claw. What are you doing? That's Silverstream's room and it's locked until she comes back. I know that. We're just going to have a look around, see if there's anything specific that Silverstream likes more than flowers, stairs, or plumbing. Still against the idea, Ocellus could do little to stop it as the lock clicked open and Smolder opened the door. Being careful not to touch anything, Smolder was slowly looking around, gently opening drawers and taking a peek. Ocellus was drawn to a stack of books Silverstream had borrowed from the library. Unfortunately, they were all about such strange subjects: electrical wiring, bathroom cleaning, deserts and of course, plumbing. Well, look at this. Smolder lifted a necklace from one of the drawers, holding it up for Ocellus to see. I thought we were going to touch any. Is that Silverstream's pendant, the one that turns her into a sea pony? I'm a little curious about this thing. Wanna test it out with me? Smolder dropped a claw over Ocellus' back, leaning a bit on her before Ocellus pushed her back. I can already transform into anything, I don't need a magical artifact to do that and you shouldn't mess with that. You don't know what you're doing. Smolder reached for the piece of pearl on the end and grabbed it. Nothing happened. She began to poke at it, still it remained inactive. See, just like I said, you don't know what you're doing, so put it back before you get us in trouble. Hang on, I think I can work this out. Smolder began to flick it, which seemed to get Ocellus angrier. I said put it back. Before Smolder knew what was going on, Ocellus had tackled her, causing the two to tumble to the ground with the necklace between them. As they rolled on the ground, trying to get it from the other, the necklace activated, without either noticing. The tumble ended when Smolder pinned Ocellus on her back, the smile on her face quickly disappearing when she saw the giant, turquoise mouth she was pinning. Smolder jumped back, tumbling over onto her back as her limbs felt strange. Ocellus, finally getting up, jumping back as she saw a giant, orange mouse in front of her. Both of the mice looked down at their own paws before looking around at the room, which was now much larger than the two of them. Surrounding them was a thick rope with small shells attached to it. Look what you did. You turned us into mice. Yeah, so what? Just turn back into a changeling. Ocellus stood there for a second, staring at Smolder, but nothing happened. I can't change. What do you mean you can't change? You're a changeling. I was a changeling, now I'm a mouse and mice can't transform. So we turn ourselves back. Smolder scurried along the ground to the now larger piece of pearl and started to slap at it. You still don't know what you're doing. Then why don't you show me book smart? I don't know how it works, that's why I didn't want to mess with it. Then we take it to someone who will know, like one of the professors. Ocellus stopped to think for a moment. They did transform into sea ponies once, perhaps they might know. Good, then help me, this thing weighs a ton. Smolder was already trying to pull the necklace by the rope, but it wasn't moving very fast. Already sure she was going to hate it, Ocellus joined in and began to pull it too, making it slide more easily along the floor. Nearly 2 hours later and a few near misses by some oblivious student, Smolder and Ocellus had finally dragged themselves and the necklace into Rarity's office. It was the closest one they could reach. Luckily for them, Rarity was at her desk, going through some worksheets while also going through some business plans for her boutiques. As she swiveled on her chair from one set of work to the other, her hooves swayed across the ground, just hanging over the floor so there wasn't any resistance in her swivels. "Professor Rarity!" Ocellus screamed from below, waving her paws in the air. Rarity continued to swing from side to side, almost kicking over Ocellus, had she not ducked under her swaying hooves in time. "She's not gonna hear our voices from down here. We gotta get her attention another way." Smolder stepped out ahead of Ocellus, standing under Rarity's hooves before reaching up at batting at them. Immediately, the hooves came down, pinning Smolder on her back as Rarity leaned in closer to her work. Her hooves had lowered a bit more, still not flat on the ground, but she was so engrossed in how much work she had, she didn't notice the tiny scratches on her sole. "Professor Rarity! You're crushing her!" Ocellus tried to lift the giant's sole, but her tiny form wasn't nearly as strong as her normal form. Acting quickly, Ocellus grabbed onto Rarity's leg, crawling up on top of her thighs where she jumped up and down, screaming her name. Rarity did feel something on her leg and looked down to see a turquoise mouse, jumping up and down on her lap. She looked up from her lap, pushed away from the desk, rolling her chair and herself into the middle of the room. The shrill screech that emitting from her mouth right after was enough to cause Ocellus to lose her balance as she tried to plug her ears, falling towards the ground. Smolder had just managed to get back up when she saw her friend falling. She scurried along the floor, leaping out just in time for Ocellus to fall on her back. "Smolder? You caught me! Don't mention it, now get off me!" Rarity was trying to leave her office by shuffling along the walls as far away from the mice as possible. "Quick, don't let her escape!" Smolder grabbed the necklace and began to drag it towards her. Ocellus quickly followed too as they managed to get to the door as Rarity did, grabbing both the necklace and her tail. You! Rarity tried to pull the mice from her tail with her magic, but they held on tightly to the few strands they could grab with their tiny paws. She refused to pull her own tail hairs out over a couple of mice. Still disgusted, Rarity held the mice up in her magic, which still held her tail as she haphazardly walked through the school. "Fluttershy? Could I borrow you for a moment?" Rarity asked as she poked her head into Fluttershy's class. "Oh. Harry will take over in the meantime." The class turned their attention to the bear in the corner who sighed as her folded his newspaper. Fluttershy quickly exited the class where she found Rarity, bouncing on her hooves, unable to stand still. "What's wrong?" Rarity brought her tail towards Fluttershy who saw the two mice, holding on as Rarity continued to attempt to pull them from her tail. "Ah, that's cute. Wait, isn't that Silverstream's necklace?" Rarity hadn't noticed the necklace the two mice still managed to hold onto. Fluttershy reached out her hooves for the two to stand on. The orange one began to squeak, but Rarity couldn't understand. "What is it saying?" Fluttershy brought the orange one closer to her ears as it continued to squeak. "Oh dear! These are Smolder and Ocellus. Apparently they accidentally turned themselves into mice when they messed with the necklace." Fluttershy grabbed the necklace between her teeth as she lifted the two mice up onto her back. "We should take them to Twilight. She'd know more about magical artifacts like that." Rarity knocked on the door to Twilight's class. All the students sat up in their chairs as Rarity entered, wandering over to Twilight and whispering in her ear. "What?" The class turned to Twilight who blushed at her sudden outburst. "Spike's in charge." She quickly ran out of the class, leaving Rarity standing there before she too backed out of the class. "Are any of the students hurt?" Twilight jumped up, bracing her weight on Fluttershy's back as she peered down at the mice, looking them over to see if they were